you can buy more assets with those. And I always believe in guaranteed rent. I believe I'm mostly Section 8. I'm veteran housing. I'm city. Why? Because the government's never late with rent. That has been my business structure.
Amen. Amen. So I'm going to bring the conversation over here. Aisha, you, like we said, came from Beanie Siegel, South Philly. I grew up in West Oak Lane, Mount Airy, in a one-bedroom apartment, and we have similar stories where we literally come from nothing. And so you were inspired to write a book called Mud to Millions. How many people come from nothing? Like, you got humble beginnings. Be honest. Right? I love that. I love that in this country, in this environment, we can turn it around. So you wrote a book called Mud to Millions. And I want you to talk about what inspired you to write this book and what are the big takeaways from this book that you can share with everyone here.
So, I mean, my first home was in a housing project in South Philly, Passion Homes. And by the time I was 30, I became a millionaire. Actually, by my birthday, May of 2008. And then, I don't know if y'all remember what happened at the end of 2008, that everything crashed and I was no longer a millionaire, which that wasn't fun, but I wrote Mud to Millions, and then, of course, subsequently the markets returned and rallied, and I invested more and dug deep and hit eight figures, right? I wrote Mud to Millions because I wanted everyone to understand that you can come from Passion Homes, you can come from South Side of Chicago, you can come from wherever. My mom had my sister and I. My mom was 16 when she had my sister, 19 when she had me. So literally every single disadvantage you can paint. If you can go from where I came from to where I am, if I can do it, and there's nothing super spectacular about me. Listen, a lot of y'all girls out here cuter than me.
She's funny, you have your sides.
If I can do it, somebody else can, and that's why I wrote the book. There's an article that came out recently that said, I think a third of people who make $250,000 or more are living paycheck to paycheck, right? I'm in personal finance by trade. I literally see people, and everybody was mad, Jeff Bezos. Well, Jeff Bezos, your mama gave you $250,000, that's why you were fuck it. Like, that's not why he's where he is, right? That's not why some of us who started from, like, when you think about it, there are a lot of people who blow opportunities, right? I see black people, I see white people, I see Asian people get a bag and blow it. Right? If you got 1/3 of people who are making $250,000 more and there's no money left at the end of their month, it's ridiculous, right? So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to mentally make a decision. I am going to make better decisions. The reality is there's a ton of ways to get to the bag, right? I've had clients who made $80,000 a year as a couple combined become millionaires by the time they retire, right? It doesn't take a whole lot of money to figure it out. First, you've got to make the decision to do it. You've got to make better decisions, living below your means, being very strategic, and stop playing that reel that I keep talking about over and over again. One of the things, we have so many traumas as black people in America, right? We've got these traumas that we're trying to overcome, right? How many of us, like, I was poor as a kid, and now I'm overcompensating because now I've got something to prove, right? So I deserve, now that I can afford it, I deserve Louboutins, and I'm not saying this is okay to have nice things. We all want nice things, right? If you was teased as a kid, now you overcompensate, you got a nice house, a nice car, a nice apartment, you got all this stuff. But at the end of the day, when you start realizing none of that matters, and I ain't got shit to prove to anybody but myself and my legacy, the minute you get there, it's on and popping.
I want to actually tag something on and use this to address something. You said something that everyone talks about Jeff Bezos, or even we talked about Donald Trump. His dad gave him $1 million. He ain't really who he say he is. Jeff Bezos got invested, his parents invested $250,000. And so when I hear black people say that, it really bothers me because we are all here for generational wealth. So you're working hard to leave something to your kid, and you talking about that kid that got something left to him. And so I want you guys to think about that too when you see people who have had generational wealth left to them. Think about the fact that this is what you're leaving to your kid. And also a lot of times taking that $250,000 and turning it into billions of dollars is harder than going from 0 to 250,000. So keep that in mind as you are leaving this generational wealth to your kids, that they have a job to take the baton further. It's not about getting a handout. It's about taking it further. So I want you guys to think about that. Talk about taking the baton further. This amazing man, Caesar, he literally started investing, 15 years ago?
17 years ago.
17 years ago. Single families to 4 families. Scaled it up to 3,000 units. Why don't you talk about how you scaled your business quickly? Because that's not easy. Any strategies for anyone who wants to scale from single families, 4 units, to doing massive units at a time?
So, just to give you a little bit, right, a little backdrop a little bit, because we were talking about Jeff Bezos and Trump. I don't come from family money, right? My story is a little different than everybody up here. I'm actually first generation. My dad was a cab driver in New York City. My mom stayed at home. And I barely have a high school diploma. Whenever all of my friends went to college, I chose the streets. All of my friends went to college, I started selling drugs. So everybody told me, if you don't change your life, you're gonna end up in prison, right? So I was a kid, I knew everything. Yeah, whatever. I ended up in prison. So what's different about my story is that in prison, I actually met a real estate investor. And at that point, he was worth a couple $100 million. And he taught me about real estate. I taught him how to bid. He taught me about real estate. And that's when my life changed. My daughter was born when I was in prison, right? So that's one of my biggest inspirations, right? So again, I don't come from money. I don't have a fancy education. I did drop a book last year and went #1. My wife says that I barely know how to read or write, but I still hit #1, right?
Testimony.
Flipping keys. And yeah, so I'm pretty much self-educated. I came home from prison. The guy that taught me how to invest into real estate, he still had to do another 7 years. He was in for political corruption. So I came out, it was 2008. I started doing mortgages, right? It makes no sense. I'm in the halfway house and I'm getting people's personal information and approving them for loans. Those days were crazy, right?
Gotta love America.
Yeah. Capitalism, right? That's great back then. Started doing mortgages, went great. The financial collapse came. I opened up a restaurant. I didn't know nothing about a restaurant. Worst decision I made. The only thing good about a restaurant, you could eat whatever you want every day. That was pretty much it. And I was watching soap operas in the back with the ladies that work there. You called for a delivery around 2 o'clock. I was busy watching novellas. Leave me alone, call back later, right? So then, at that point, I saw an opportunity in real estate. I saw the first deal. I got into a deal, I made $70K. I closed that restaurant the next day. I left everything in the fridge, money in the register. I ain't here. I never even looked back, right? And I've been doing real estate ever since. At first, it's tough, right, when you get into real estate, because you got to figure out how do you do that first deal. My first deal, I had no money, right? I bought a property, it was $20,000. For that first deal, I sold my car. We pawned all our jewelry, borrowed money from my parents, my mother-in-law, sold my wife's engagement ring, whatever I had to do to get that first deal. Once I got the first deal, right, boom, all right, everything is great, I got my first deal. Then now, how do I do the next deal? So whenever I would sell a property, right, that's when I would get my profit back, then I will invest in other deals. My problem was, at that point, 2 years in, I didn't have enough money, right, to play around with. So one guy called me one day, he said, yo, you're doing it the wrong way, OPM, other people's money. So that's when I learned about private financing and all those other things. So once I started using OPM, right, partnering up with other people, that's when I took it to the next level, because now I could scale. So I went from doing two to 3 deals a year to doing 20 to 30 deals a year. And that's over time, just kept on scaling and learning how, eventually coming up with different ways how I can eventually get 100% financing from banks, right? Because there's so many techniques that you learn over time, but everything is a process. There is no such thing as overnight success. One real estate deal is not going to get you rich. Every time I close on a deal, I already have another 100 deals lined up. So it's always about, just keep on going, moving forward, and eventually you get a lot of gray hairs, but you already know what it is, because nothing is easy. Everything, takes time, right? But without risk, there's no reward. When I first started, I wanted to make $5,000 a month, right? If I got $1,000 per unit, and I got 3,000 units. You already want to know what that means, and I don't want to brag, right? But again, I wanted to make 5,000, hit that, kept on going. And the same thing that I did, you guys could do.
Okay. I love it. So this last question, we're going to go around and we'll have a group conversation about it. So on my way here, I sat in the plane next to an amazing gentleman who was on his way here as well. And we got to talking and he started giving me some numbers on a deal that he was doing. So me, I'm a nerd, I'm a numbers person. Obviously, I'm in real estate. So I start analyzing his deal. And so based on his numbers, he had projected a cash flow in 9 months that this property would bring him. And so I said, have you factored in rising interest rates? And he's like, no, not really. So I'm like, okay, well, if you finish this property in 9 months, the Fed meets about 5 times, pulled up the calendar, maybe about 5 times. They've risen rates 75 bips twice in a row already. So if they continue, if you believe that they're going to continue, that's 3%. That's going to be a big jump in the cost of your mortgage payments. So that's going to drastically change your cash flow. So now that we are officially in a recession, right? The definition of a recession is GDP shrinks 2 sessions in a row. We're officially in a recession. Interest rates are rising. Inflation is up. How have you changed your investment strategy, your investing strategy, and what would you recommend to a new investor? How many of you are new and it's like gung-ho, you ready to get it in? Then you heard that we in a recession and you're like, wait, what? What am I supposed to do? So I'm here to help you. I want these guys to answer, what would you recommend a new investor? How should they adjust their investing strategy based on the current market conditions?
Yeah, I say even if, no matter what the market is, when you're starting out real estate, like I didn't just get real estate just to get real estate. You know how many times in the last 22 years the interest rates went up, interest rates went down, talks of recession, pandemics, I mean whatever it is.
Thank
like,
you.
look, you have to have a purpose for every property you purchase.
Exactly.
What's the purpose? Interest rates gonna keep going up and down, but what's the purpose that you got while you buying this property? Like I literally, I said I wanted to live in this kind of house. I didn't think about the interest rate. I didn't look at the interest rate. I said that once I purchased this property, put some money into this property with a rehab loan, and the net income from this property is going to cover my house note. Then I'm going to do another property to cover my car note. Then I'm going to do another property to cover my kids' tuition. Like, it's the purpose behind it that's going to keep driving you. So the people that's just starting out in real estate, you have to have a purpose. Some of y'all want to start a business. Some of y'all want to start a business and you're going to the bank getting denied for a loan. You're getting denied and you letting this banker tell you that, you know, man, your dreams, your hopes, whatever business is you want to start, you can't do it. But I'm telling you that business is in the bricks. It is in the bricks. Have a purpose and then now find out what property. Over time, like I said, those interest rates are going to change. But what I'm doing in my strategy right now, I'm fixing and flipping. Right now, it's been a great flipping market. I've probably flipped about 30, maybe more than that, probably about like almost 40 properties this year. And so there's somebody still buying these properties. So I'm buying them. Caesar came to Chicago. I've shown him a bunch of them. You're still able to make money in this market right now. So don't let these interest rates scare you. You just have to get started. But then, like I said, you have to have a purpose on why you're getting started and let that purpose drive you to become successful.
My sentiments fall in the same space. I'm still doing deals. I'm doing $1 million deals. And my thought process with this is that as long as the rent is going to cover my debt, I don't let the interest scare me off because I'm going to lock that in. As long as that rent is covering that, we're fine. My other thought process for me is for those new investors. Like when I first started investing out of state, my goal was to make sure I have properties that were cash producing. I don't look at properties as properties. They are businesses. If I tell you I'm going to sell you a business, that business has never defaulted on a loan payment in the last 5 years, and you want to buy that business, and then I tell you, oh, that business is a rental property with a tenant that's been in there long term. Shouldn't be no difference. That tenant's not going to move out, or the government's not going to stop paying rent just because you bought it. So I keep it for a few years, then I may sell it off and I invest it somewhere else. But the key thing I want to share with you guys, speaking on generational wealth real quick, we get this wealth, and the key thing, it turns into from generational to self-wealth. You have to understand the goal is always to change your life and your legacy. When I speak to you, I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking through you to talk to your legacy. The goal is to make sure that you set up your legacy. In 2019, I developed my first trust, and I understood the power of what I was doing with that trust. I developed my trust to pay out my generations. My wealth, for example, once something happens to me, some of my assets get sold, $1 million of that goes to one place for my grandkids. Half of that, another $500,000 would go into a trust for my great-grandkids. My great-grandkids would now get $500,000 when they turn 21. $500,000, 6% compound interest. That would now turn it about $1.6 million for my grandchildren. They only get half. $800,000 goes to my great-grandchildren. 8%, $800,000, 21 years, they get it. That would now turn it about $2.6 million for my great-grandchildren.
Right.
Now my great-great-grandchildren, they only going to get half. The other half is going to stay invested about $1.2 million. 1.2 million, 21 years, 6% interest would now be roughly about $4 million to now my great-great-grandchildren. Now my last grandchildren generation, they're going to get that $2.3 million. Now that's going to lead to about another $8 million. What I'm showing you is that you can now change your legacy, because Rockefeller's been doing this with his structure. When I say give them the money, I mean in the bank, inside my trust where they will borrow the money. I want you guys to understand this is something you must do. Create a trust for your legacy. This is bigger than every one of us in here. Please do not get a will. Please do not get this wealth. There's a certain amount of money you need, and that's all you will ever need. Create a trust, change your legacy, and I want to make sure we see the rest of our generations in this room talking about this moment that all of us was on this stage, and we gave this knowledge that changed your life forever. Appreciate you.
What about you?
I love capitulating markets. You know, like when it's blood in the streets, that's where I shine. The last several years, things have, like, while the bidding wars and you got 80 people bidding on the shit, I don't participate in that. It's like a feeding frenzy. I like to get while the getting's good. I bought most of my properties, most of my portfolio. I stacked. I mean, I was taking shit I couldn't fix. Like, I'll take it. Ma'am, you selling? I'll take that too. From 2011 to 2018, I was buying houses in Philly for $6,000, $7,000. I mean, I was flipping over couch cushions, looking for change. Like, where can I get money in order just to buy as much as I possibly could? I still have inventory that I'm still today am going back and fixing. So while the markets are running, I'm just going back and fixing stuff that I have. I think everyone in this room who's looking to buy their first property, who's looking to scale, in times of capitulation, you'll have better opportunities. So don't let the term recession scare you, because that's when people who over leverage. As a woman investor, I'm a little bit more conservative probably than most of my male counterparts. I gotta sleep at night, right? So I'm interested in building steady, even. I don't have a lot of debt. I think like most of my properties are free and clear, because that helps me sleep at night. So find a strategy that works for you. And what I'd be curious about and really interested in seeing as rates continue to spike, and the market has already started to soften in a lot of markets, I would see that as a new investor as opportunity, because I don't want to bid on a property with 80 other people. I want a property that's been sitting a little bit, sellers getting a little desperate. I'm gonna pop in, y'all hungry yet? Like, I'm looking for opportunities, and in a rising interest rate environment, we'll start to see some opportunities created, and that's where y'all should get excited.
Yes.
So, right, my first property that I bought, my first interest rate was 8%, right? That was the first rate I had back in 2005. So when you're telling me that rates are now almost 6 or, in the 5s, I'm like, I had an 8% rate, right? But this is the problem, right? For us, right, as landlords, right, it's not affecting us when it comes to interest rates. Why? Why is the reason for that?
Cash flow
Because rents are so high.
Exactly.
So any property that I have or that I'm buying, right, it doesn't affect me. Yeah, rates are a little bit higher, but now I'm making $500 to $800 more per unit. What you guys gotta understand, right? Like most people don't understand this part of it, is rates went up, right? The last couple of years, what happened? It gave us a chance as minorities to afford more with less money because rates were so low, right? So all of us are building wealth, we're investing in real estate. Rates go up. What happens? That scares us. They start using the word recession. It pushes us out of the market. So what happens now? It makes us renters, right? So now is either you're gonna buy a house, right, pay a higher rate, or you're gonna pay somebody's high-ass rent.
Yeah.
Rents right now nationwide are $2,500, right? That's the average, right? Where I'm from in Patterson, New Jersey, when I first started, my average unit was $900, right? Now, I'm getting rents $2,000 to $2,500, and the average income where I'm from is still $40,000 to $50,000. It makes no sense, right? So how is everybody going to pay these high-ass rents, right? So the problem is, it's not the rates, it's that there's a housing shortage. There's not going to be a recession in real estate. Any property that sells right now for $550,000, right? If you're a flipper, that comp is good for a whole year, so you can still flip. The question now is, are you going to be a real estate investor, or are you going to be a renter? You have two choices. There's a housing shortage. There's not enough houses to buy. There's not enough apartments to rent, right? So it's either you're going to pay somebody's mortgage, or you're going to pay somebody, somebody's rent. Either you have to make a decision. You're going to make money or you're not. Even though if you're buying at a higher rate, you can rent that unit or that house at a higher number because rents are so high. So either you're going to make money or you're going to be left out.
Amen.
So there's conversation has been going on around generational wealth. This is like a trending term right now. And I know a lot of people just think that buying real estate is the answer to generational wealth. There has to be some planning done, and Storm, you talked a little bit about that already. There has to be some planning done and structuring done in order to actually turn the real estate into generational wealth. So let's go around and talk about strategies for actually leaving generational wealth, leaving behind assets, right? You talked about structuring it so that your grandchildren can get assets, right? The Bible says a good man leaves wealth